Hey everybody, welcome to this week's video. I just wanted to quickly thank you guys for the support that we got on the last video. That video did amazing, and I'm pretty happy. So yeah, that's been good. But as you saw by the title today, we're going to be doing some terrain, and we're going to be doing this little mini series where we just spin a wheel and we see what type of terrain we have to make. So I am going to put the wheel up on screen and we'll see what we get. So, looks like today we're doing some trench warfare terrain. This is going to be for 15 millimeter or 1 to 100 scale miniatures and war games. Of course, if you want to make this bigger for like another war game that's like 28 millimeter or 35 millimeter, that's fine. It's just this video, it's going to be all the measurements for 15 millimeter. But I'm just going to quickly go over how to make trenches and how to do barbed wire and debris and crater effects. So yeah, let's get right into it. So some of the things that you're going to need for this project. First, you're going to need paint. So I'm only using craft paint for this project. So I'm going to use some brown paint, some black paint, and some white paint. If you want to paint details, you can get different paints. You're going to need some PVA glue. These are coffee stirrer sticks, not popsicle sticks. I find because they're skinnier, they work better with our scale. And then this is a piece of like wire mesh that I cut off of like a sieve, and this is going to be for barbed wire. I'm going to use a chipboard as the base for the terrain. And then we got some pebbles and some sand. So this is just going to be like rubble and for extra detail. So sand a bit finer than the rubble or the pebbles. And then this is just some pebbles that I bought from the dollar store for like plants and stuff. And this is some cork board. So you can find that at any craft store or like Staples or stuff. And then I also have an offcut of foam board that I'm going to use for debris. So I just trace out the shape that I want my trenches, and what I want them to be is I want them just to be a little, probably like 2 centimeter thick piece in front of the infantry models. I don't want it to be this massive trench line because in our scale, it's kind of hard to do so. So I'm just going to cut these out. You could use an X-Acto knife, but I'm just going to use scissors because it's easier. And once we have our little bases, you can see them there. What we're going to do is we're going to put them on our corkboard and we're just going to trace them out with a Sharpie. Pencil doesn't really show. If you want to use a pen, go ahead. But a little recommendation for when you're cutting with corkboard is angle your X-Acto knife inward. So see how I'm doing here? Angle it inward and not outward so that when we cut it, there's a little bit of a hill, like an incline that leads up to the top of the trench, just like, there would be in real life. So you can see that I'm cutting inward, and then once you cut it enough, you can just kind of rip it up, and that also kind of creates a rocky texture, or like a rough terrain texture, and then I'm just going to clean it up a little bit. So you can see that that fits pretty much perfectly on the chipboard base. So there you go. And you can see that the infantry aren't much, like they're taller than it, like the trench is not very tall. So I'm actually going to add another piece of chipboard here, but I'm going to keep all the other pieces similar height because I'm just going to add like rubble and debris. So you can use hot glue, super glue, PVA glue. You could use contact cement, whatever you want to use. It doesn't really matter. These two stick pretty good together. And I suggest just putting some weight on it to make sure that it dries evenly. And then what I suggest doing is taking all your offcuts of chipboard and ripping them up into pieces so that you can glue those onto the chipboard just for like extra rubble effect, as you can see here. So it looks a little bit like teeth, but what we're going to do is we're just going to put some of that pebble and sand and rubble stuff all over it, just to kind of give it that, bombarded, quickly dug trench piece. And for this piece, I'm actually not going to do that corkboard. I'm going to show you how to do debris. So what I do is I just take this foam board offcut, just this piece of foam board, and I rip it into like pretty big chunks, just like, debris from like an exploded building or whatever. And then I'm just going to glue those to the chipboard. And then I'm going to break off smaller and smaller chunks just to put on top of that first debris. And then I'm also going to put these black pebbles all around it as well. And yeah. So I'm just going to do even more black pebbles and just see how much I can layer on top. Next, I'm going to dilute some PVA glue in some water and paint that on top of all of the debris so that it dries and sets and it doesn't fall off. So when you're gaming or anything, it doesn't fall off. So then I'm going to do some wood structures just to, in World War II, they did this. So just cut some popsicle sticks and then, or coffee stir sticks, and then cut them in half just to, make the planks a similar size, and then just hot glue them onto wherever part of the trench you want them. And then we're going to paint these later. So next, grab some corrugated card. So this just kind of looks like corrugated metal. So you can use super glue or PVA glue, and you can just glue that onto the sides. And lastly, what I'm going to do is sandbags. So I'm just going to grab some green stuff. So you can see that when you mix the green stuff, it turns into a different color. You can use Milliput or Play-Doh or anything you really want to use, clay. I'm just going to roll it out into a snake and then flatten it. And then I'm going to cut it with an X-Acto knife. And then I'm just going to shape them all into little sandbags. And you can see there, we got some little sandbags. Then I'm just going to super glue those onto the thing, and they'll get a coat of paint later. Speaking of paint, I'm going to paint the entire thing in a cinnamon brown color, but you can do a darker brown or a lighter brown. But I'm going to dilute that not too bad, but pretty heavily with some water so that it seeps into all those cracks. And you can be messy with this. Everything else is going to get a coat of paint. The only thing I suggest being a little clean with would be the wood, because the wood will get a pretty see-through coat of paint. So just try not to touch the wood too much. But other than that, you can pretty much touch anything with the paint just as kind of a base coat. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to do the debris. So you can just make a dark gray with some black and some white. And I'm just going to paint this all over the debris. I'll dilute it with a bit of water. Just try not to hit the mud. Of course, you can go over the mud if you hit it with the gray. But yeah, this is just to kind of make that broken, destroyed, blown up building kind of effect. And I'm also just going to base coat those corrugated card pieces with the gray as well. Next, I'm going to do the wood. So I'm going to dilute some dark brown paint with some water, heavily dilute it with some water. And then I'm just going to paint that all over. And when that dries, it's going to turn into a nice woody brown color. Next, I'm going to do the sandbags. So for the sandbags, I'm just going to use an off-white. You can use an egg white. This is a sand white. Then I'm just going to pick out those sandbags with the off-white, and it looks pretty good. Then I'm going to do some dry brushing. So first, I'm going to do a white dry brush on all the debris. So just get some paint on your brush and then wipe it all off, and then dry brush the debris. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a light brown dry brush on all of the mud. So I'm just going to add some white to some brown, mix that together, and then get it all off on some paper towel, and then just pick out all the muddy pieces on all your trenches. Then I'm just going to do a silver dry brush on those two pieces of corrugated card. You can do a rusty, bronzy dry brush. I'm just going to do silver because it's pretty simple, and you can see that those really start to pop. Then what you can do is you can add some flocking. So I just got some pieces of grass and foliage, so I'm just going to put a dab of PVA glue on the trenches and then put some of that foliage everywhere, so you can see there. Looks pretty nice. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to dilute some PVA again, and then I'm going to slap that all over the trenches. And then I'm just going to put some flocking on it. So this is a dark green kind of swampy looking grass piece of flocking. If you want to do dry tall grass, I suggest you grab some jute rope or some twine and cut it into 1 centimeter pieces so that you can just put a dab of PVA glue down on your trenches. They kind of look like that. And then you just put that down, and then you kind of tuft it out, and it just kind of looks like that. And you can do that however much you want. I only did it a little bit because I'm going for a little bit of a destroyed feel. So what I'm going to do for the barbed wire is I'm just going to rip a couple of strands off that piece of mesh and wrap it around a paintbrush just so it gets that little twirly effect. You can see there, it kind of looks like barbed wire. And then I'm just going to grab some super glue, and I'm